Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. My name is Anna and I am a macrame artist and teacher. Today I will be making a new wall hanging, and this is actually the first macrame project that I'm doing ever since I had the baby, if we don't count the curtain, which was already kind of half done. And if you haven't seen my last video, check it out up there, because that's where I've done a sketch of this wall hanging that I'm about to make today. So as always, let's first run through the list of supplies. I will be using this piece of wood to hang all of the macrame on. It's about 84 centimeters long, and I've actually got this from the customer who bought the macrame curtain from me, and he already did all of the sanding and prepping, and he used some kind of a varnish or some kind of an oil that made that gave the wood this like darker tone, darker color, which I've never done that before. I don't know if I would, but I kind of like it, so I'm just going to use it for this. And then I'll be using 5 different cords or 5 different colors. I've got these 4, almost can't hold it up. They're all 3 millimeter in the size. I've got the mustard down at the bottom, the natural up here, then this is Eucalyptus green, and then this color is called Terracotta. And then I have a bunch of these scrap cords. Now these are 5 millimeter and they're in the color sand. And if you haven't seen my video about using scraps, that's up there, because this is exactly what I'm doing with these. So you can see that they're super short, and I'll be using them for some tassels in the project. Now, there is no particular reason why I'm using 3 millimeter cords, other than I just had these already from previous projects and I wanted to use up some cords, so these were the colors that I thought went well together. And same for these. There is no particular reason why I'm using 5 millimeter cords, other than I already had these and I wanted to make sure that I used the scraps. Although I have to say, for the tassels, it will be nice that these are thicker, because the thicker the cords, the easier it is to make the tassels. Like the fewer cords and fewer brushing I'll have to do to get a nice tassel. So this is a lucky coincidence, I would say. And by the way, as always, for all the measurements and lengths of all the cords that I'm using, you just need to head down to the description, click on the show more button, I think that's what it's called, to see the full description where you will have all of those measurements. And as for my tools, I'll definitely be using my clothing rack and also most likely a glue gun towards the end to clean up some of the bits. And with that, I can get started. I'll cut first the green cord, which I'm gonna use for the middle section of the wall hanging, and I'll take you through what I'm doing in just a little bit. I started by adding all of the green cords to the wood with the lark's head knot, and then I went ahead and I started the whole section with the square knots. So just a super simple square knot, one after the next. The first row has all of the cords done into the square knots, and then in the next row, the alternating square knots, you have to leave out 2 of the cords on each side. And then it's back again to the full row. And like this, I did a total of 14 rows. After that, I started leaving out more cords on each side to create this sort of a triangle shape at the bottom. For the next section then, I added the natural cords and I started doing some double half hitch knots. And don't worry, you will see a close-up and a slow version of that in just a second on the other side of that braid. And you can also see what I'm doing here to make it easier for me to add those long cords. I basically make the lark's head knot on my hand and only then add it to the piece of wood. So I'm first taking one of the cords in the middle and putting 2 double half hitch knots on it from the cords on the left towards the center, and I'm really tightening them quite close to the piece of wood. What you will see me do on the other side when I switch to the other one is I'm leaving quite a bit of a gap there between the double half hitch knots and the piece of wood. That is definitely on purpose. I always do that when I work on these kinds of braids. It is so that when I connect the braid to the other side in the middle of that green section, essentially, it's not going to create any like bunched up cords at the top of this braid right here. So you have to give it a little bit more space on one side and tighten it really well towards the center. So far it's been just regular double half hitch knots. And now when I'm working on the bottom half of that diamond, I'm just switching up which of those cords I'm taking. So you see the travel cord stays the same, but I'm first taking the cord that's more towards the middle, and only then I'm adding the one that's closer to the side. This is just to make it a little bit different. I could totally do it just in like the cords in order, let's say. So the close one and then the further one, but I thought that I would just do something different here. Also, if you remember from my sketch, I wanted to put some berry knots from that mustard cord in the middle of those diamonds, but I've changed my mind and you will see in just a bit what I'm doing with that instead. So there will be nothing added in the center of the diamonds here. So that's why I've chosen to do this sort of pattern instead. At the bottom, I'm choosing the cord that's going towards the center to be my travel cord and putting the other one, which was the travel cord before, on it. And that completes the diamond. And then I'm continuing with this fast way of adding the double half hitch knots onto the travel cord to save some time and also to save those 3-ply cords, because when you do it this way, they don't get unraveled at the bottom because you're not threading them through anything. So there is quite a few benefits to this way of doing the double half hitch knots. And I'll just keep going like this until I have 12 of these diamonds on each side of the braid. Then doing some double half hitch knots on the green section as well. So it's just this one line of double half hitch knots. The top cord on the very left and on the very right are the ones that become the travel cords, and then I just put on a row of double half hitch knots on those. I'm done with those, it's on to some more square knots. And this time I'm leaving some gap between that row of double half hitch knots and these square knots. And I'm making just a few, it's 4 on each side and then 1 in the middle. And you can see here I had to undo them a little bit because that first gap was bigger than the other ones, so I just extended the other ones a little bit as well. Then I can add the tassels. So I'm taking 3 of these brown cords for each. I'm first unraveling all of the tassels, and here it's really great if they are already unraveled a little bit at the ends, because that will make all of this brushing a lot easier. And it is a lot of brushing. Once I'm done with the bundle, something like this, I'll take it and then thread it through those middle cords. So I take the 2 cords in the middle. First, I wrap one side around one of them and then the other side around the other cord. So it's really simple, but it can be a little bit difficult to do if your gap is not big enough, and you have to be careful to not pull those cords from the tassels in the middle, because that would be really hard to then fix. And I'm just giving it a little bit of a brush again, and this is why we had to make those square knots there, so that they're holding the tassels at the bottom. And I've added 2 more tassels on each side, and now just taking some really sharp scissors and cutting those tassels a little bit shorter. And it's time to connect that braid. So I'm taking a long piece of that mustard cord and making a gathering knot. So I'm holding the piece of cord to the back, making a little loop down there. I'm holding that with my pinky and then making all those wraps around all those cords. And I'm making quite a few there. And then you just loop the remaining cord through that loop that you were holding and pull the top. So the cord or the knot gets kind of pulled underneath those cords and it holds pretty tight, so you can then just take your scissors and cut both of the ends. And it's onto the fringe. So I've cut a bunch of those natural cords. That's the best way that I think you can do the fringe, is just have the same length cut and then just add it. I did, for most of the sections, I did 2 cords. Some had just 1. You can kind of see that on the right side, which sections are the ones that have just 1 cord. And then you can see here is where I'm adding a little bit more of that mustard. I'm basically making that gathering knot the exact same one I made down there, except I'm only making like 2 or 3 loops. And I'm adding that on every other section of the fringe. last section is the one with the terracotta cords. So I'm adding, again, just using the regular lark's head knot, I'm adding 5 of those cords, and then I'm making a vertical double half hitch knot. So I'm adding the terracotta cord and then making those vertical double half hitch knots across all those 5 cords that are hanging down there. And with the terracotta cords, I've done a total of 6 rows. So 3 going towards the center and then 3 going the other way. And I'm also here using a little bit of a faster method to make the vertical double half hitch knot. It's not as fast as the regular one because you can only do 1 knot at a time, but it still helps. And again, it's nice for the 3-ply cords because you're not looping them, you're not threading it through anything, so it doesn't destroy the ends, it doesn't unravel them as much. I'm then adding 2 rows of the green cords the exact same way with that vertical double half hitch knot, adding it in the same way, and then again using the faster way if I can, if I have long enough cords. And I'm doing just 1 way there, 1 way back. And then it's on to the terracotta one again. And in total, I'm doing 5 of the terracotta sections and 5 of the green sections. So that's one side done, and then I moved on to the next. And as I was making that first one, or maybe it was during the second one, I have decided to change my plans again. And if you remember from the original sketch, I was planning to do a longer version of this exact same thing next to it, but I've decided not to and just keep it simple with just the one short side. I guess for 2 reasons. One was time, that I just wanted to get this done. And the second one was because I was using those 3-ply cords, they can be really harsh on your fingers. And doing all those vertical double half hitch knots was really taking its toll on my fingers. So I've decided to just go with the simple short version here. Next thing, I chopped off those green cords in the middle, and I also cleaned up those sections on the side, just cutting the pieces a little bit shorter and using my hot glue gun to glue them to the back. And then it was time for the most fun part of this project, which is always for me the unraveling of those 3-ply cords. And you will see in the close-up, basically what I'm doing is I'm untwisting the top a little bit and then pulling one of the threads out of the twist, you could say, and then doing the same thing with the other one. And that's it. I found that that's the easiest, fastest way to unravel these 3-ply cords. So I did that on those terracotta cords on both sides, and then I've also done it in the middle on those natural cords, but just the ones in the very middle that are held by that big gathering knot. And here we are with the final piece. It is a bit different from my original sketch, but not too different. I think it's still kind of the same vibe, the same thing. I hope you have enjoyed the tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.